The auto shop lease termination letter arrives on a Tuesday. Rebecca Morrison's father holds the paper with grease-stained fingers, reading the same paragraph 3 times like repetition might change the words. 26 years he's run Morrison Auto Repair in this building off Route 80, and now suddenly the landlord needs the property for redevelopment. The timing lands like a punch, 3 days after Rebecca filed for divorce from Senator Douglas Brennan. Her brother lost his county maintenance job yesterday. Budget cuts, they said, after 8 years of spotless performance reviews. Her mother's bakery faces its 3rd surprise health inspection this week. Violations that never existed before now appear on clipboards wielded by inspectors who won't make eye contact. Rebecca stands in her parents' kitchen watching her father's hands shake. Her daughters sit at the table doing homework, too young to understand why Grandpa looks like he aged 10 years overnight. Outside, Selma's evening traffic hums past, oblivious. Inside this room, Rebecca feels the full weight of what it means to embarrass a Brennan. This isn't coincidence. This is war. 15 years ago, Rebecca believed she married a public servant. Douglas Brennan came from Montgomery elite, 3rd-generation politician, family name carved into plaques across 3 counties. He met her at a community education fundraiser, listened when she talked about her Title I students, asked thoughtful questions about literacy gaps. 6 months later, they married at First Presbyterian with 400 guests and a gospel choir that made her mother cry. The control started small, suggestions about her wardrobe for campaign events, gentle corrections about how she spoke to his colleagues, phone calls monitored under the guise of security concerns, friendships that complicated his political positioning. She told herself this was partnership, that wives of powerful men made sacrifices. But lying in bed at night, listening to Douglas schedule meetings at 11 p.m. with voices too soft to be business, Rebecca learned a different truth. She wasn't his partner. She was his proof of normalcy. The schoolteacher wife from Selma who made voters trust him. The woman who smiled at fundraisers while he dismissed her career as cute to donors who wrote 6-figure checks. Their daughters learned to read their father's moods like weather patterns, bright and charming for cameras, cold and distant at home. Rebecca taught them resilience without meaning to, showing them how women bend without breaking, how love sometimes looks like endurance, until endurance becomes its own kind of death. When Rebecca finally left in early 2023, taking the girls to her parents' house with 2 suitcases and a decade of exhaustion, she expected anger. She expected lawyers. She expected Douglas to fight for appearances. She didn't expect total annihilation. Douglas doesn't process rejection like normal people. A Morrison, daughter of mechanics, granddaughter of retail workers, just walked away from a Brennan. His friends at the Montgomery Country Club whisper behind cupped hands. His mother asks pointed questions over Sunday dinners. Political rivals sense blood in the water. He sits in his Capitol office the night Rebecca's lawyer files papers, staring at family photos he never really looked at before. In his mind, this isn't heartbreak. It's humiliation. And humiliation, in Douglas's world, requires correction. He picks up his phone, makes 3 calls. Within 72 hours, the Morrison family's systematic destruction begins. Real estate developers who owe Douglas favors suddenly need properties. Landlords discover urgent redevelopment plans. County supervisors remember budget constraints. Health inspectors find violations in businesses they approved last month. Every call traces back to one source, though no one will say his name out loud. Douglas doesn't see families when he does this. He sees chess pieces, obstacles, problems requiring solutions. The fact that Rebecca's father built his auto shop from nothing, that her mother's bakery employs 6 people, that her brother has 2 kids, none of this registers. Only the message matters. Cross a Brennan, watch your world burn. The Morrison family meets in crisis formation around the kitchen table, the same table where they celebrated birthdays, planned weddings, grieved losses. Now they count casualties. 26 years, Rebecca's father repeats, still holding that letter. His voice cracks on the numbers. Her brother slumps in a chair, phone full of unanswered job applications. Her mother stands at the counter, hands buried in dish soap, scrubbing plates that are already clean. Productive motion as defense against panic. Rebecca's daughters retreat to their grandmother's guest room, sensing adult fear they're too young to name. Through the kitchen window, ordinary life continues. Neighbors mowing lawns, teenagers shooting baskets, dogs barking at passing cars. The Morrison family watches this normalcy like prisoners watching freedom through bars. "He's doing this," her mother says finally, not a question. Rebecca nods. She cataloged every business connection Douglas cultivated, every favor he traded, every pressure point he could squeeze. She knew his playbook. She just didn't think he'd use it against people who never hurt him. Her father looks at her with eyes that have never shown blame before. What do we do? And here, in this moment of complete powerlessness, Rebecca makes a choice. She could run. Take her daughters to Atlanta or Nashville, somewhere Brennan connections thin out. Start over where no one knows her married name. Instead, she opens her laptop. Years of playing the perfect political wife taught her things. How to stay quiet during phone calls while memorizing every word. How to file documents without asking questions. How to exist in rooms where powerful men forget you're listening. Douglas treated her like furniture, present but irrelevant. Furniture sees everything. She pulls up her email drafts and types a name she's been researching for weeks: Vanessa Holt, the Birmingham investigative journalist who built a career exposing Alabama corruption. The woman who doesn't flinch when powerful men threaten lawsuits. Rebecca's message stays simple. I was married to Senator Douglas Brennan for 15 years. I have information you'll want to see. She hits send before fear can stop her. Across the table, her father asks, "Honey, what are you doing?" Rebecca closes the laptop, looking at her family. Her father with grease permanently embedded in his knuckles from honest work. Her mother whose bakery feeds half of Selma's morning commuters. Her brother who maintains the county's roads without ever asking for recognition. Good people. People who never played power games or crushed others for sport. I'm done being quiet, she says. What Douglas doesn't know yet, what powerful men never know until it's too late, is that the wives they dismiss keep records. The women they underestimate build networks. The families they destroy remember everything, and sometimes the person you hurt most becomes the one who finally stops you. Stay until the end of this story, because what happens next involves an alliance Douglas never saw coming between the wife he abandoned and the mistress he tried to buy off. Two women who both loved him, both got used, and both decided enough was enough. Rebecca's phone buzzes, an email response from Vanessa Holt. Let's meet tomorrow. I'll bring coffee and a recorder. In his Montgomery office, Douglas schedules meetings to expand his retaliation campaign, confident the Morrisons will crumble within weeks. He doesn't know his wife just lit a fuse. He doesn't know his campaign manager, Patricia Keene, has been waiting for this exact moment. He's about to learn that destroying a family has consequences, that power borrowed from the people can be taken back, that the woman he controlled for 15 years kept better records than his lawyers. The kitchen table falls silent. Rebecca's mother stops scrubbing. Her father sets down the termination letter. They look at their daughter, the schoolteacher from Selma who married power and survived it, and they see something new. Not a victim preparing to flee, a woman preparing to fight. Rebecca remembers the exact moment she fell for Douglas Brennan. November 2008, community education fundraiser at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. She wore a borrowed dress and talked too fast about her third graders, how they arrived hungry, how they couldn't focus on multiplication when breakfast was a luxury. Most politicians gave polite nods while scanning the room for bigger donors. Douglas stayed. He leaned against the fellowship hall's brick wall, actually listening. Asked about title and funding gaps, wanted to know specific policy changes that could help. When she mentioned needing basic supplies, pencils, notebooks, winter coats, he wrote it down in a leather journal she'd later find filled with genuine ideas alongside calculated political moves. You really care about this, she said, surprised. My grandmother was a teacher in rural Alabama, he replied. She told me education is how ordinary people become extraordinary. 6 months later, they married at First Presbyterian with gospel music that made her mother weep with joy. 400 guests filled the pews. Brennan's in the front rows wearing generations of wealth, Morrison's in the back wearing Sunday best bought on credit. Rebecca believed the gap between those rows could close, that love transcended class, that a Brennan could genuinely love a Morrison for who she was. She believed it for almost a decade before the truth crushed her. The control started gentle. Wardrobe suggestions for campaign events, grammar corrections in front of his colleagues, phone monitoring framed as security protocol. He isolated her from college friends who didn't understand political life, made her quit the reading committee because it complicated his education platform, turned her teaching career into campaign prop, the schoolteacher wife who proved his commitment to public education. At night, lying beside a man who felt increasingly like a stranger, Rebecca cataloged the warning signs she'd ignored. The way he talked about constituents like chess pieces, how he measured relationships by utility, his genuine affection for power and performance of affection for family. Their daughters learned to read his moods, when to approach, when to disappear. Rebecca taught them resilience without meaning to. Showed them how women survive by bending, how love sometimes looks like endurance dressed as duty. But that November night in 2008, that version of Douglas might have been real, or maybe she just wanted him to be. Either way, the man who listened to her talk about hungry children became the man who weaponized government against her family. Memory has weight. Some memories anchor you, others drown you. Vanessa Holt receives Rebecca's email at 11:43 p.m. while reviewing zoning corruption files in her Birmingham apartment. The subject line reads, "Senator Brennan, I have everything." Vanessa's spent 12 years exposing Alabama political corruption. She knows how these messages usually go. Scared spouses making promises their fear won't let them keep. They meet once, maybe twice, then disappear when lawyers apply pressure or threats get specific. But something about Rebecca's email feels different. The language stays controlled. No hysteria, no revenge fantasy. Just, "I was married to Senator Douglas Brennan for 15 years. I have information you'll want to see." Vanessa replies within minutes, "Waffle House off I-65. Tomorrow 2 p.m. I'll bring coffee and a recorder." She arrives early, choosing a booth with clear sightlines to the door. Watches families eat scattered, smothered, covered hash browns while their kids color on placemats. Normal people living normal lives, the people politicians claim to serve while systematically betraying. Rebecca walks in at 1:58 p.m. No dramatic entrance. Just a woman in jeans and an Alabama State sweatshirt carrying a messenger bag that looks heavy. She slides into the booth, orders black coffee, meets Vanessa's eyes without flinching. "Thank you for coming," Rebecca says. Vanessa places her recorder on the table between them. "I need to know you're serious, because once we start this, there's no walking it back." Rebecca reaches into her bag and produces a folder. 3 years of text messages between Douglas and city officials, zoning manipulation records showing how he steered contracts to donors, audio files of him bragging about crushing the Morrison problem to his chief of staff, bank statements tracking suspicious transfers. But the document that makes Vanessa's hands still? A handwritten ledger in Rebecca's neat teacher script, dates, names, amounts, a decade of Douglas's corruption cataloged by the wife he treated like decorative furniture. "He forgot I was listening," Rebecca says quietly. Men like him always do. Vanessa spreads the documents across the sticky Waffle House table. This isn't just retaliation against one family. This is systematic abuse of office-spanning years, pattern, not anomaly. "This could destroy him," Vanessa says. "You understand that?" Good. No hesitation, no tears. Just a woman who spent 15 years watching power corrupt her husband and finally decided enough. Vanessa's phone buzzes. Unknown number. "We know you're meeting with Brennan's ex-wife. Careful what stories you publish. Defamation suits are expensive." She shows Rebecca the message. "They're watching you." "I know." Rebecca's voice stays steady. "I've been followed since I filed for divorce. Black sedan, 2 men, rotating shifts. Douglas wants me scared." "Are you?" Rebecca thinks about her father's shaking hands. Her mother's silent tears. Her daughters asking why Grandpa's shop closed. "I'm done being scared." Here's where it gets wild, because Rebecca wasn't working alone. Patricia Keene watches the Waffle House meeting from her Honda Accord 3 rows away. For 7 years, she's managed Douglas Brennan's campaigns, scheduled his appointments, cleaned up his messes. She's the one who pays off inconvenient people, who makes problems disappear, who ensures every public appearance reinforces the senator's carefully crafted image. She's also the woman he's been sleeping with since 2018, promising her a future once the timing's right. When Rebecca filed for divorce, Douglas didn't panic about losing his wife. He panicked about losing control of the narrative. He called Patricia to his office, handed her an envelope containing $50,000 in cashier's checks and said, "Your services are no longer needed. This is your severance. Sign the NDA." 7 years of loyalty, 7 years of believing his promises, reduced to a payoff and a gag order. Douglas made one catastrophic mistake. He never asked Patricia about her past, never wondered why his wife's college roommate ended up working for him, never considered that 2 women who both loved him might compare notes. Patricia pulls out her phone, types a message on a burner app. "Rebecca, it's me. We need to talk. I have what you need to finish him." 3 minutes later, her phone rings. "Patricia?" Rebecca's voice carries shock and something else. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. "I know what he's doing to your family," Patricia says. "I helped him do it. I scheduled the calls, coordinated the permits, managed the pressure campaign. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Silence stretches across the line. When Rebecca speaks again, her voice is softer. "Are you safe?" That question breaks something in Patricia. Douglas never asked if she was safe, only if she was useful. "I've been recording him for 18 months, Patricia says. "Every meeting, every phone call, every backroom deal. I have bank records showing embezzlement, emails proving he used campaign funds for personal vendettas. Video of him calling your father," her voice catches. "Video I can't unhear." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I watched him destroy you, and I helped. Because he promised me the same future he promised you. Because I'm done being the woman who enables bad men." Patricia grips the steering wheel. "Because we were friends once, remember? Before I became someone I don't recognize." Rebecca remembers. Freshman year at Alabama State, late-night study sessions where they dreamed about changing the world, how life scattered them in different directions until Patricia showed up at Douglas's campaign headquarters and neither woman acknowledged their history. "What do you need?" Rebecca asks. "Trust and proof you're serious." "I just gave Vanessa Holt enough evidence to trigger a state investigation," Patricia exhales. "Then let me give her the rest." They meet at Patricia's sister's house in Tuscaloosa on a Wednesday afternoon while the neighborhood sleeps through the heat. Rebecca arrives first, pulling into the driveway of a modest ranch house with children's bikes scattered across the lawn. Patricia's car appears 5 minutes later, a silver Honda, not the luxury sedan she drove as Douglas's campaign manager. Inside, Patricia's sister serves sweet tea and disappears upstairs, giving them the dining room. The women who once studied together, who both fell for the same man's lies, who ended up on opposite sides of his destruction, they spread documents across a table much nicer than the Morrison family's kitchen gathering place. Bank statements showing Douglas paid contractors to sabotage Morrison family businesses. $15,000 to the auto shop landlord, $8,000 to trigger permit violations at the bakery, $5,000 to ensure Rebecca's brother's job elimination, transactions masked as consulting fees but time-stamped to match each attack, emails coordinating the campaign, Douglas to his chief of staff. "Make sure the health inspector understands our concerns about the bakery. Be creative," chief of staff's response. "Consider it handled." Text messages revealing the scope. Douglas bragging to donors, "The Morrison problem is being addressed. Sometimes you have to teach people where they belong in the order of things." But the video Patricia plays makes Rebecca's hands shake. Douglas sits in his Capitol office, feet on the desk, phone on speaker. "No, I don't care about his reputation. The man fixed cars his entire life. You think anyone cares about some grease monkey losing his lease?" He laughs. "His daughter embarrassed me. He pays. That's how this works. Make sure he knows it came from me." Rebecca closes her eyes. Her father, who worked 60-hour weeks to send her to college, who never asked anyone for anything, whose hands are permanently stained from honest labor, reduced to some grease monkey by the man she once loved. Patricia stops the recording. I have 47 hours of audio like that. Videos, emails, financial records, everything you'd need to destroy him legally. Why didn't you release it yourself? Because I was complicit. Patricia's voice cracks. I scheduled those calls. I knew what he was doing. I told myself it was just politics, just how the game works. But watching what he did to your family... She stops, composes herself. I needed someone with standing, someone he actually hurt. You're not just a whistleblower, you're the victim with proof. Rebecca studies the woman across from her. Patricia's aged since college, who hasn't, but underneath the expensive haircut and professional makeup, she recognizes the friend who once helped her pass biology, who dreamed of changing the world before the world changed her instead. You could have stayed silent, Rebecca says, taken the money, disappeared. So could you. They sit with that truth. Two women who could have run but chose to fight instead. Rebecca's phone buzzes. Vanessa Holt. Are you somewhere safe? Douglas's team is accelerating. I need to publish soon. Patricia leans forward. When Vanessa publishes your evidence, I'll walk into that newsroom 2 hours later with mine. He'll be fighting a wildfire on 2 fronts before he can organize a response. This will destroy your career too. I don't want a career built on enabling men like him. Patricia slides a flash drive across the table. Everything's on here. Audio, video, documents, financial records. When he falls, I fall with him. But at least I fall on the right side. Rebecca takes the drive, feels its weight, literally an ounce, metaphorically a man's entire corrupt empire. She thinks about her daughters watching this unfold, learning what it means when women stop being complicit and start being courageous. He's going to come after us hard, Rebecca says. Let him try. Patricia's smile is grim. We're not the women he thinks we are. Stay with me, because what they didn't know was this: the real battle wouldn't be against him, but against a woman just like them. Vanessa Holt's article publishes across multiple platforms simultaneously. Senator Douglas Brennan's secret war against his ex-wife's family. Documents reveal systematic abuse of office. The opening paragraph doesn't waste time. When Senator Douglas Brennan's wife filed for divorce, he didn't hire better lawyers. He weaponized his political office to systematically destroy her working-class family's livelihoods, and the evidence is overwhelming. Screenshots of text messages, audio transcripts, timeline infographics showing each Morrison family business attack coordinated from Douglas's office. Vanessa names names, cites sources, includes every piece of documentation Rebecca provided. Within 30 minutes, it trends across Alabama social media. Within an hour, national outlets pick it up. Within 2 hours, news trucks line the Capitol parking lot. Douglas's phone erupts. His chief of staff, his lawyers, his donors, his mother, everyone calling at once. He silences them all, preparing to do what powerful men do when caught: deny, deflect, attack the messenger. But before he can schedule his response press conference, Patricia Keene walks into that same Birmingham newsroom carrying a folder thick enough to require both hands. I worked for Senator Brennan for 7 years, Patricia tells Vanessa's editor. I have proof he embezzled campaign funds, used state resources for personal vendettas, and maintained shell companies to hide illegal transactions. I'm here to provide everything. The second wave hits before Douglas even understands the first. Social media ignites. Dr. Brennan accountability trends nationally within hours. But it's not just outrage, it's recognition. Families across Alabama begin sharing their stories. The small business owner whose permits mysteriously stalled after he opposed Brennan's highway project. The teacher who lost her job after questioning education budget cuts. The county clerk forced into early retirement for reporting irregularities. Douglas's pattern becomes visible. One family's tragedy reveals itself as systematic oppression. Rebecca watches the explosion from her parents' living room, her daughters at school, her mother and father on either side of her. They read comments from strangers validating what they lived through, offers of support, crowdfunding campaigns for her father's shop, people showing up at her mother's bakery buying out entire displays in solidarity. Her phone rings. Vanessa. The State Ethics Committee just announced an emergency investigation. His donors are releasing statements deeply concerned by the allegations, which is politician speak for abandoning ship. You did it, Rebecca. You exposed him. But Rebecca doesn't feel victorious, just exhausted. Justice is coming. But the cost was her family's suffering, her daughter's stability, her own years of silence. Her father touches her hand. You gave us our dignity back. That's when Rebecca finally lets herself cry. But none of them realize it yet. They haven't won. They've just awakened the devil. And you'll understand exactly what that means in a moment. Douglas holds his damage control press conference at 4 p.m. in the Capitol Rotunda. He wears his best suit, practices his sincere expression, surrounds himself with loyalists who haven't abandoned him yet. The strategy: deny specifics, attack the journalists, frame himself as victim of political persecution. These allegations are a coordinated smear campaign, Douglas begins, voice steady with rehearsed conviction. My ex-wife is bitter about our divorce. Ms. Holt is a journalist with a known bias against conservative politicians, and Ms. Keene, he pauses for effect, is a disgruntled former employee seeking attention. Behind him, two staffers nod supportively. His lawyer stands ready to threaten lawsuits. This is the playbook that's worked before. Deny until the news cycle moves on. But something shifts in the room. Reporters aren't nodding, they're checking phones, exchanging glances, waiting. A journalist from Montgomery raises her hand. Senator, are you aware your mother called a press conference 10 minutes from now? Douglas's mask slips. Excuse me? Eleanor Brennan, your mother. She's speaking to press at her home in 20 minutes. The color drains from Douglas's face. Douglas's 74-year-old mother, Eleanor Brennan, architect of the Brennan dynasty's public service reputation, watches her son's disastrous press conference from her quiet sitting room, the television light flickering against shelves of framed political history. His shouting, his blame-shifting, the chaos, it threatens not just his career, but the family name she spent decades protecting. Without hesitation, she picks up her phone and calls her attorney. She stands on her front porch 20 minutes later, cameras assembled in her manicured garden. She wears a navy suit, pearls that belong to her grandmother, and an expression that's carried her through 3 decades of Alabama politics. Rebecca watches from her parents' living room, still riding the high of Douglas's public humiliation. Her mother grips her hand. Her father leans forward. They're about to witness the Brennan matriarch condemn her own son, except that's not what happens. Eleanor's voice carries the weight of old Alabama power, the kind that doesn't shout, just speaks and expects obedience. My name is Eleanor Brennan. Senator Douglas Brennan is my son, and I need to address these coordinated attacks against him. Rebecca's stomach drops. I've watched my son serve this state with integrity for 15 years, Eleanor continues, each word measured. And now I'm watching 2 bitter, vindictive women attempt to destroy him using selective evidence and manufactured outrage. The room tilts. Rebecca's father stands up. No, she can't. Ms. Morrison is angry about a divorce she initiated. Ms. Keene is a disgruntled employee who was terminated for cause and refused severance. They're weaponizing the media against a good man who refused to be manipulated. Eleanor pauses, letting cameras capture her dignified sorrow. The Brennan family has served this state for 3 generations. We don't abandon our own based on unverified allegations from unreliable sources. I stand with my son completely. She announces the family is retaining Marshall & Associates, the most aggressive defense firm in the Southeast, that she's personally funding Douglas's legal counterattack, that they will pursue defamation suits against Rebecca, Patricia, and any outlet that published unsubstantiated claims. Douglas made mistakes in his marriage. What man hasn't? But destroying a family's livelihood? Eleanor's voice hardens. My son would never. And I will spend every resource the Brennan family has proving these accusations false. The press conference ends. Eleanor walks back inside without taking questions, leaving Alabama's political landscape transformed. Rebecca sits frozen. Around her, the celebration from 30 minutes ago evaporates. Her phone explodes, journalists asking for comment, supporters confused, her lawyer's urgent voicemail. We need to talk, now, Patricia texts. She just weaponized the Brennan name against us. Everything we built just got complicated. Vanessa calls. Rebecca, I'm so sorry. I didn't see this coming. Eleanor Brennan defending him changes the whole... Rebecca hangs up. Can't breathe. Can't think. She exposed Douglas with proof, recordings, documents, witnesses, and his mother just reframed it as a vendetta by scorned women. Her mother's voice sounds distant. Honey, what does this mean? Rebecca doesn't know yet, but watching Douglas's face on the news, relief replacing panic, confidence flooding back, she understands one thing. The war just escalated. Within 48 hours, the narrative transforms. Douglas's donors start returning calls. News outlets add phrases like allegations and unsubstantiated claims to stories that were factual yesterday. Social media splits between those who believe Rebecca and those who see Eleanor's defense as proof of innocence. The recall petition, which hit 52,000 signatures, stalls. People who were ready to remove Douglas now question whether they judged too quickly. Because if Eleanor Brennan, architect of the family's legacy, stands by him, maybe there's more to the story. Rebecca receives a letter from Marshall & Associates threatening defamation suits seeking millions. Patricia gets served with bar complaints questioning whether her recordings violated wiretapping laws. Vanessa's newspaper faces legal motions so numerous, their legal team spends full days just responding. But the worst part? The thing that makes Rebecca understand how outmatched they are? The Morrison family situation quietly improves. The bakery inspections stop. Just stop. No announcement, no explanation. The inspectors who found violations weekly simply don't return. Her father receives a call about his shop lease. The redevelopment plans are being reconsidered. Maybe they can work something out after all. Her brother gets a job offer, better pay, county benefits, starting immediately. Rebecca's lawyer calls with news. The pressure campaign against her family has mysteriously ceased, like someone flipped a switch. She sits at that kitchen table, the site of every crisis, and understands what's happening. Eleanor isn't just defending Douglas, she's showing Rebecca what power actually looks like. The envelope arrives on Thursday afternoon. Heavy cream stationery, Eleanor Brennan's personal letterhead. Dear Rebecca, I would like to meet with you privately. Tomorrow 2 p.m. my home. Come alone. There are things we need to discuss about your family's future. Eleanor, Rebecca's lawyer says don't go. Vanessa says it's a trap. Patricia texts, she's more dangerous than Douglas. Please be careful. But Rebecca thinks about her father's lease, her mother's bakery, her brother's new job. The timing isn't coincidence. She arrives at the Brennan estate the next afternoon. The mansion sits on 5 acres of Montgomery's most expensive real estate. White columns, oak trees older than the Civil War, gardens maintained by staff Rebecca will never meet. Eleanor greets her at the door personally. No security, no lawyers. Just a 74-year-old woman in a cashmere cardigan offering sweet tea like they're old friends. Thank you for coming, Eleanor says, leading Rebecca to a sitting room filled with political memorabilia spanning decades. Photos of Eleanor with governors, senators, presidents. The Brennan legacy visualized. They sit. Eleanor pours tea with steady hands. I didn't ask you here to threaten you, Eleanor begins. I asked because we need to understand each other. Rebecca says nothing. My son made mistakes. I know that. But Douglas is a Brennan, and the Brennan name cannot be destroyed because one man exercised poor judgment. Eleanor's tone stays conversational, almost kind. You want justice, I want stability. These things don't have to conflict. He destroyed my family, and I stopped him. Eleanor gestures around the room. The inspections at your mother's bakery, gone. Your father's lease, being negotiated. Your brother's job, secured through my personal contacts. I did that, Rebecca. I protected your family when my son attacked them. The truth of it lands heavy. Eleanor did intervene. The Morrison family situation improved the moment she entered the picture. Why? Rebecca asks. Because I'm not interested in punishing innocent people for my son's stupidity. I'm interested in containing damage. Eleanor leans forward. Douglas will face consequences, internal ones, private ones, but not public destruction, not the complete annihilation you're pursuing. He committed crimes. He exercised poor judgment using legal mechanisms. There's a difference. Eleanor's smile stays gentle. The zoning pressure? Legal. The permit reviews? Standard procedure. The job eliminations? Unfortunate but defensible. Douglas's lawyers will argue prosecutorial overreach, and they'll win. You know why? Because powerful people protect powerful people. Rebecca feels the walls closing in. But you have a choice, Eleanor continues. Keep fighting. Burn through your savings on lawyers. Watch your daughters suffer through years of litigation. Destroy any chance of the Morrison family recovering. Or, she pauses, work with me. Work with you how? Help me manage Douglas. He trusts you less than anyone, which makes you valuable. Feed me information about Patricia's evidence. Guide Vanessa's reporting toward less inflammatory angles. Help me control the narrative while I ensure your family stays protected. Rebecca's hands shake around her teacup. You want me to betray the people helping me? I want you to be smart. Eleanor's voice hardened slightly. You exposed Douglas thinking justice would follow automatically, but justice requires power, and you have none. I do. Every judge hearing your case went to school with Brennan family members. Every jury pool comes from counties where we employ thousands. Every news outlet depends on advertisers who fund campaigns we influence. She lets that reality settle. You can fight a system designed to protect people like us, or you can let me help your family while quietly managing my son. Which choice actually serves the people you love? Rebecca thinks about her daughters, her parents, the years of litigation ahead, the cost of principle versus the price of survival. I need time to think, she says. Eleanor nods, understanding. Of course. But while you're thinking, consider this. Your family's lease negotiation closes Monday. Your brother's job offer expires Wednesday. These windows don't stay open forever. She walks Rebecca to the door, grandmotherly and terrifying. I'm not your enemy, dear. I'm the only thing standing between your family and complete ruin. Douglas wanted to crush you. I'm offering cooperation. Choose wisely. Rebecca drives home in silence, Eleanor's words echoing. She expected an ally and found a puppet master, expected justice and found power offering deals. The kitchen table gathering that night feels different. Her parents' business is stabilizing, her brother employed again. They're grateful, relieved. They don't know the price Eleanor expects for that relief. Rebecca's phone buzzes. Patricia, did you meet with her? Are you okay? Rebecca stares at the message. Eleanor asked her to guide Vanessa's reporting, feed information about Patricia's evidence, betray the women who risked everything to help her. She doesn't respond. Can't yet. Because part of her, the part that spent 15 years surviving Douglas by bending instead of breaking, understands Eleanor's logic. Power protects power. Truth without power is just noise. Her family is safe because Eleanor decided they should be. And Eleanor can reverse that decision anytime she wants. Patricia shows up at Rebecca's house unannounced Saturday morning. She looks like she hasn't slept, hair pulled back, eyes scanning the street before she enters. We need to talk, Patricia says, and not here, not anywhere they might be listening. They drive to Oak Mountain State Park, hike a trail far from parking lots and people. Only then does Patricia speak. You met with Eleanor. How did you? Because I worked in that house for 7 years. I know how she operates. Patricia stops on the trail, faces Rebecca directly. What did she offer you? Rebecca hesitates. Eleanor's words about controlling the narrative, managing Douglas, protecting the Morrison family. It sounds reasonable when Eleanor says it, practical, strategic. She said she's not my enemy, Rebecca says carefully, that she stopped Douglas from destroying my family, that she can keep us safe while handling him privately. Patricia closes her eyes. She's lying. My family's situation improved because she orchestrated the attacks in the first place. Patricia's voice rises, then drops to urgent whisper. Rebecca, listen to me. I've seen Eleanor's playbook. She doesn't protect people, she controls them, and the way she controls them is by becoming their only lifeline. What are you talking about? Patricia pulls out her phone, shows Rebecca a document. Look at the timestamp on Eleanor's legal defense fund announcement. She had the paperwork drafted a week before your family was attacked. Rebecca stares at the date. March 14th. Her father's lease termination came March 21st. She knew, Patricia says. Eleanor knew what Douglas was planning because she encouraged it. She told him to handle the Morrison situation decisively. I heard the conversation. I have it recorded. The ground tilts beneath Rebecca's feet. She let Douglas attack your family so she could swoop in as savior, so she could position herself as your protector while making you dependent on her mercy. Patricia's hands shake. You're not fighting Douglas anymore, Rebecca. You're fighting someone older, smarter, and infinitely more patient. But why? Why would she? Because the Brennan name is everything to her. Douglas's public destruction threatens that. But if she controls both sides, manages Douglas while neutralizing you, she protects the dynasty. Patricia grips Rebecca's shoulders. She doesn't want justice. She wants control, and she'll use your family's safety as leverage to get it. Rebecca thinks about Eleanor's gentle voice. The reasonable requests, the implied threats wrapped in grandmotherly concern. What do I do? You stop trusting her, stop feeding her information, and whatever you do, Patricia's voice drops. Don't tell her what I just told you, because she'll know I'm still a threat, and people who threaten Eleanor Brennan have a way of disappearing. Eleanor calls that night. Her voice carries warmth that now sounds calculated. Rebecca, dear, I hope you're considering our conversation. I'd like to meet again. Monday morning. There are documents I need you to sign. Simple agreements about media cooperation, nothing concerning. Just formalizing our arrangement. Rebecca's throat tightens. What kind of agreements? Standard NDAs, collaboration terms, things that protect both of us. Eleanor's tone stays light. Your father's lease negotiation is Monday afternoon. It would be helpful if we had our arrangement settled before then. The message lands clear. Sign what Eleanor wants, or the lease falls through. I need my lawyer to review anything before I sign. Pause. When Eleanor speaks again, the warmth has cooled. Of course, though involving more people complicates things, and complications sometimes lead to unfortunate delays in family business matters. Rebecca's hands shake. Are you threatening me? Threatening? Eleanor sounds genuinely surprised. Dear, I'm protecting you, but protection requires cooperation. Surely you understand that. After she hangs up, Rebecca sits in her daughter's room, watching them sleep. Safe right now because Eleanor decided they should be. Vulnerable the moment she stops cooperating. Vanessa calls with news that makes everything worse. The state ethics investigation just slowed down. Key witnesses are refusing to testify. Documents are mysteriously delayed. Someone with serious power is shutting doors. Eleanor, Rebecca says. What? Eleanor Brennan. She's not helping. She's controlling the whole thing. Vanessa goes quiet. Then, Rebecca, if that's true, we're not just fighting Douglas anymore. We're fighting someone who's been playing this game for 40 years. Tuesday morning, Patricia misses a scheduled call with Rebecca. That's unusual, but not alarming, until she misses the backup call and doesn't respond to texts, and her phone goes straight to voicemail. By Tuesday evening, Patricia's sister reports her missing. Last seen leaving her apartment Monday night. Security footage shows her getting into her car. Then nothing. Her phone is found Wednesday morning, smashed in a parking lot 3 miles from her apartment. Her laptop vanishes from her home office. All the backup recordings she kept, gone. Police label it a personal crisis. Maybe she ran. Maybe she couldn't handle the pressure. These things happen during high-stress situations. But Rebecca knows. Vanessa knows. Anyone paying attention knows. Patricia warned Rebecca about Eleanor. Some hours later, she disappeared. Thursday morning. Rebecca receives a formal invitation to Eleanor's estate, not a request, a summons. She arrives at noon. This time, there's no sweet tea, no grandmotherly warmth, just Eleanor in her study, surrounded by 3 generations of Brennan political power visualized in photographs and plaques. Sit, Eleanor says, not an invitation, a command. Rebecca remains standing. Where is Patricia? Ms. Keene is handling personal matters. That's not why you're here. Eleanor gestures to the chair again. Sit. We need to discuss your cooperation. I haven't agreed to cooperate. Eleanor's expression doesn't change, but something hardens in her eyes. Yes, you have. You've been cooperating since the moment I stopped the attacks on your family. Every day your father's shop stays open is cooperation. Every morning your mother's bakery serves customers is agreement. Every paycheck your brother receives is compliance. Rebecca's stomach drops. You said you wanted justice. Eleanor smiles sadly, the way you'd smile at a child who doesn't understand how the world works. No, dear, I wanted stability. The Brennan name cannot fall because my son threw a tantrum. He committed crimes. He exercised poor judgment with legal mechanisms. There's a difference, and that difference is what $300,000 in legal fees buys. Eleanor stands, moves closer. Douglas embarrassed this family. He acted like a spoiled child. He will face consequences, private consequences, therapeutic consequences, but not public destruction. Rebecca steps back. Eleanor steps forward, closing the distance. You want your family safe? Then help me control him, not destroy him. Justice is messy. Legacy is eternal. Everything falls into place. The timing of Eleanor's intervention, the selective protection, the way every door opened just enough to make Rebecca grateful, never enough to make her free. Eleanor didn't rescue the Morrison family. She redirected the knives, then held the handle herself. You knew, Rebecca says, voice barely above a whisper. You knew what Douglas was planning from the beginning. Of course I knew. I'm his mother. He tells me everything. Eleanor returns to her desk, picks up a folder. I tried to talk him out of it, but Douglas needed to learn a lesson about control. So I let him create a disaster, then I stepped in to manage it. 2 problems solved simultaneously. You used my family. I protected your family. Without me, your father would be bankrupt, your mother's business closed, your brother unemployed. You should be thanking me. Rebecca's hands shake with rage she can barely contain. I handed you everything, the evidence, the contacts, the schedules. I thought you were helping. I was helping. I am helping. But help requires gratitude, Rebecca. And gratitude requires cooperation. Eleanor opens the folder. I have documents here that need your signature. Eleanor spreads papers across the mahogany desk. Legal documents, dense with text Rebecca recognizes as NDAs, retractions, revised statements. What are these? Your path forward. Eleanor points to the first document. This is a revised statement for Vanessa Holt. You'll say you misinterpreted Douglas's actions due to emotional distress from the divorce, that you now realize your allegations were exaggerated. Rebecca's blood runs cold. I'm not signing that, Eleanor continues as if she didn't speak, pointing to the second document. This is a complaint against Patricia Keene, stating she manipulated you into making false accusations, that she fabricated evidence, that she was the mastermind behind the entire campaign against Douglas. Patricia's missing. Patricia is handling personal matters, Eleanor repeats, voice sharp, and when she returns, she'll face consequences for her role in this manufactured scandal. The third document. This is a joint statement with Vanessa Holt's paper, acknowledging their reporting was based on unverified claims from compromised sources. They'll issue a retraction. Rebecca stares at the papers, a complete reversal of everything they built, everything they exposed. You're protecting him, she says. I'm protecting us. Eleanor's voice carries absolute certainty. Douglas must not fall publicly. He must not face prison. He must not disgrace the Brennan name in ways that can't be repaired. She walks to the window, looks out over her estate, 5 acres of generational wealth and accumulated power. Here's what will happen. You'll sign these documents. Douglas will quietly resign for health reasons. He'll spend 6 months at a private facility in Arizona, legitimate treatment for stress and poor decision-making. During that time, I'll work with party leadership to rehabilitate the Brennan name. Eleanor turns back to Rebecca. The investigation will conclude that mistakes were made, but no criminal intent existed. Douglas will issue a public apology. Your family will receive a settlement, generous enough to rebuild everything, contingent on your continued silence. And if I refuse? Then Friday, your father's lease terminates. Monday, your brother's employment ends. Tuesday, your mother's bakery faces violations that will require 6 months to contest. 6 months she can't afford. Wednesday, I file for emergency custody of your daughters based on your documented emotional instability during this manufactured crisis. The room tilts. You wouldn't. I already have the paperwork prepared. Eleanor's voice stays calm, almost kind. Child Services received an anonymous report about your mental state. The judge reviewing it went to law school with my late husband. These things move quickly when safety concerns exist. Rebecca can't breathe. Her daughters. Eleanor's threatening her daughters. You're a monster. I'm a realist. Eleanor picks up a pen, offers it to Rebecca. Douglas is my son. Flawed, certainly. Cruel, occasionally. But he's a Brennan, and Brennans don't fall publicly. Not on my watch. Not while I'm still breathing. She places the pen on top of the documents. You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. Sign, and your family stays protected. Your father keeps his shop. Your mother keeps her bakery. Your brother keeps his job. Your daughters stay with you. Everyone moves forward. Eleanor walks to the door, opens it. Their meeting is over. Or refuse, she says quietly. Convince yourself you're choosing justice over survival and watch everything you fought to protect crumble while Douglas quietly recovers in Arizona, the Brennan name intact, and your family destroyed for nothing. Rebecca stands frozen in that study, surrounded by generations of Brennan power. Photos of Eleanor with presidents, senators, governors, a dynasty built on making people believe they had choices when really they only had the illusion of choice. One more thing, Eleanor adds, almost gently. Patricia's disappearance? That wasn't Douglas, that was me. She threatened my family, so I removed the threat, just like I'll remove any threat, including you, if necessary. The grandmother mask drops completely, and what's underneath is cold, calculating, and absolutely certain of victory. I own the leash around your family's throat, Rebecca. The question is whether you're smart enough to accept that reality or foolish enough to fight it. Eleanor gestures toward the hallway. My driver will take you home. Think carefully. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. Bring your signed documents or bring your family's ruin. Your choice. Rebecca sits in the back of the Brennan family car, those unsigned documents in her lap, and finally understands the full scope of the trap. She didn't just fight Douglas. She walks straight into Eleanor's web. Every piece of evidence she gathered, Eleanor knows about it. Every contact she made, Eleanor controlled it. Every move she thought was progress, Eleanor allowed it, waiting for the moment when Rebecca was so grateful for protection she'd accept any terms. The kitchen table gathering tonight will be the hardest one yet, because Rebecca has to tell her family the truth. They're safe only as long as she signs away their justice. And Eleanor Brennan is patient enough to wait, powerful enough to destroy them, and cruel enough to use their love for each other as the weapon that forces compliance. This is what real power looks like. Not theatrics, not violence, just the quiet certainty that someone owns every door, controls every outcome, and wins by making resistance more painful than surrender. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., Rebecca Morrison will either sign those documents or watch her world burn. And Eleanor Brennan already knows which choice Rebecca will make, because mothers protect their children, and Eleanor's counting on that. If you want to know whether Rebecca signs, whether she protects her family or stands against Eleanor, you'll need part 2. Because what happens next isn't about evidence anymore. It's about fear, power, and the moment a woman decides she's had enough. Comment below. Would you sign? Would you risk everything? Subscribe so you don't miss part 2. And just know this. Eleanor Brennan has no idea what Rebecca is capable of when she finally stops being afraid. Part 2 is coming. Stay ready.